Hello, my name is Jonathan Records, and for those who don't know me, I am a minister of the gospel of the Lord Yeshua HaMashiach, Son of the Living God. That is Yeshua, my Messiah. He is the one who came in the flesh and died for my sins. And I just wanted to speak on a very simple note: no judgment, no condemnation, no thoughts of thinking evil if other people find themselves involved in these things. But I wanted to speak on a subject while I finish and drink my coffee that is very hidden to most people because they go without knowledge. And the Word of God says that His people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. So I wanted to just bring out some very basic key points that I think is needed to understand, especially in the last days when people are very deceived by signs, by wonders, by things in the skies, depending on the culture, things in the waters, things in the forest, things in everything. Our culture is heading towards a direction that is very pantheistic and polytheistic. No longer stands for the values and the principles given by the Word of God. And I can say honestly that I don't think in some ways, not every way, but in some ways, I don't think it really has from the beginning, especially America. So I just wanted to very peacefully, very gently expose some understanding that I have, and I hope that you benefit from it. I am someone who grew up very much with so many Christmas traditions that one would actually either really love it or really after a minute get tired. And so I just want to speak, but I'm gonna speak from an angle that most people don't even think to actually begin with. I'm not going to, in this video, speak specifically on Christmas, but I want to speak specifically on what I believe is the entity or the power or the spirit behind what may be Christmas. So I hope that you gain some understanding, and let's jump right into it. Thank you. So I've titled this message, "Don't Call This Your Mother." And before I reveal what it is, I would like to say that Christian used to be fully Christian, but not everything Christian is necessarily Christian. And I say that because the history of the Catholic and the Protestant, so when you look at the Catholicism is actually not within the same system of belief as the Christianity prior to Catholicism. So Catholicism, it used to be very much a cult that was very governmentally tied, as well as a means to control the masses from Christianity breaking out to strong. Now, many may disagree when they look at some of the beliefs of Catholic. Some may say, well, I was a Catholic and this is not what the Catholics told me, but I want to try to break it down as best as I can, and perhaps some of the material in this presentation will expose to you what the Catholics traditionally have actually always believed. So I will reveal to you who their Jesus is and who their Mary actually is, as far as spiritually. So the Catholics, they are considered, according to the Roman Catholic Church, the mother of the Protestants. So the Protestants are considered the children or the daughters of the mother. So the mentality of the Catholic Church is to bring back the children to their mother, and this has been very much a part of the mentality of the Pope, and many Catholic churches, although you will find many Catholics who don't necessarily think this way in general, but the Roman Catholic system in general, this is actually the message that they are communicating with their words, and only those who understand how the Catholic Church works will understand this. So I want to expose to you what is referred to as the Queen of Heaven. Queen of Heaven is mentioned in the scriptures, but it is not necessarily so much understood. But I want to show you who she is. She is this figure right here, very much identified or paired with the moon, as well as accompanied with the sun god, which if you understand biblical history, is Nimrod. So Nimrod and Semiramis, or Queen of Heaven, the sun and the moon always went together. If you connect the history of paganism and the history of the Catholicism, you will understand that when Catholics attempted to convert the pagans, they did not necessarily fully convert, they integrated. So you can worship your sun god, and we're going to build our Catholic cathedrals on top of your pagan temples, and in order to worship the sun, you have to come to the church in order to worship the Son of God rather than the sun god. However, what ended up happening, if you understand history, is that the mentality did not necessarily change from the sun god to the Son of God within the church, as well as what happened in the synchronization of the Roman Catholicism is that you have pagans and some Christian ideas, but still very much communicating what is pagan. So the queen is the mother, and this is paganism's female fertility goddess. So I'm just going to go over some ideas that come from myself actually studying this entity, and I will expose fully who she is to the best of my ability. I'm no expert, so bear with me. So she is the entity that gives life in reproducing and dispersing all other gods in the heart and the mind of idolaters. So go back to the Tower of Babel. History tells us, rather Christian history, Jewish history, pagan history, it all points to Nimrod. And Nimrod, he's the one who built the Tower of Babel, and inside that tower, before languages, you go to Genesis chapter 11, I believe, where all languages were divided and people broke up and created different nations, and God said, let us go and confuse their languages so that they cannot understand each other. Why? Because they were thinking that they would elevate themselves as high as the heavens, and inside this temple they were offering sacrifices to this figure, which before was not necessarily called Queen of Heaven just yet, but they saw something in the skies, and in the skies they basically, if you look at astrology, this is where astrology comes from as well, but they saw something, and they created rebellion on the earth, and it was a competition between, I believe, Lucifer and God himself. So indeed, there wasn't many different gods. It was the one idol, Lucifer, which in their hearts and their minds, because they were blinded by this figure, it created into many different gods, many different idols that they created for themselves in their mind. And this is where polytheism comes from, and in their heart it was between make this your god, Nimrod, who created rebellion on the earth to worship Lucifer, and Nimrod also referred to as Baal, or make the Lord your God. So this is where this comes from. Mystery Babylon, this is what the origins of it. So Mystery Babylon starts with Semiramis, Queen of Heaven, who is not really a queen in heaven, but a spirit and a sorceress, a female demoness or goddess, an idol of the people of Babylon. And this figure, Semiramis, or Queen of Heaven. So she uses sorcery and witchcraft. She leads rebellion and pride. Her objective is to dethrone God and possess the world. She comes in the name of peace and globalizes religion and politics. She gathers riches and wealth and causes people to be rich but lose their soul. And she blinds the world through her deception and sorcery. Lucifer many times is revealed or portrayed as a male figure. Well, this is the female version of him, and this I believe brings more clarity to what the book of Revelation talks about when talking about the woman in purple who rides the red dragon. So the red dragon is Satan, who is also referred to as a dragon. And this woman, she is sometimes referred to as a serpent. So it's another way of looking at this figure, or another way of talking about who is Satan also. So the Queen of Heaven works in many ways. She controls nations. She is the principality over the Babylonian system. She controls all religions. She gives birth to and multiplies demons. She has a family. So in the mind of a pagan, if you have a male figure, you have to have a female figure because of husband and wife. She is a serpent, a mermaid, a night owl, a dragon, a demoness. She's all of these things. She is a female version of Lucifer. I just mentioned that. She's also known as Jezebel or Ashtoreth. Understand that it's the same entity that we're talking about. She is known by many names, depending on which culture perspective you look at her. Recently, I walked into a home of Vietnamese, and in this home was exposed to Queen of Heaven, as upstairs they had an entire sanctuary for her, where they would do their meditation, and I am sure bringing gifts and offerings to her. But she was the main focus within this room. So just wanted to bring that up, that I'm not just making these things up. And then she brings witchcraft and idolatry in various forms. So whatever shape, form, size, however she chooses to manifest, understand that the world religions are rooted all to this very same root. Anything that has to do with idolatry, witchcraft, pagan, polytheism, anything that discards the idea of a monotheistic God, which Christians know as Yahweh, or Yeshua. She brings in many forms, and then many different cultures have many different stories about the same entities. So each culture is going to bring a slightly different perspective. So as you can see, and this doesn't take very long to understand, that Mary in the Catholic Church may not be Mary, and Jesus may not be Jesus. In the pagan world, you have what is referred to as Semiramis and Tammuz, which can also be referred to as Nimrod or Baal. So these are actually the same people. My wife is actually from a place in central West Africa, and it's interesting how even African culture, and it doesn't necessarily mean the same thing, but the mother and the baby feeding on the breast actually is the same thing going on in the pagan. So as you can see, there's some similarities, and sometimes certain cultures they'll lift up the mother or the woman figure, but the real person who is in ultimate control is sometimes the male figure. It's what gives her the power. So in reference to Jezebel, it wasn't Jezebel who had all the power, it was Ahab who was creating the Jezebel out of her. So when we talk about dominant or controlling women, it's the man who, because of lack of understanding and lack of knowledge, actually created the Jezebel in her. Wives are always honored because they become mothers, but understand that that is also very cultural, but as you may want to observe, that anytime we lift up a mother, a mother can become an idol just as much as a father can become an idol, and it's very important to understand. So which came first and which is the copy? How do we know that Jesus is really Jesus and Mary is really Mary? Now we're talking about Christianity and we're trying to discover the truth. Well, the truth will be revealed when the Word of God is actually in you. If anyone who lacks the Word automatically does not know their Messiah, does not know Yeshua, the Son of the living God, and as a result can easily blend in with this without being able to discern. So Nimrod and Semiramis. This is where the main story goes back to, and you have the Tower of Babel, which I explained to you. So if you look at different cultures, they're all going to be called by different names, and my personal opinion, which is debatable, it's arguable, and I understand that, but this person here on the top right, Ishtar or Inanna, another name possibly is Lilith, which I believe can possibly, I'm not saying fact, but possibly can be the serpent that Genesis is referring to, back to Adam and Eve, but that's by theory. People argue about it all the time, but the stories are out there if you wish to search it more. So here's just some examples that I wanted to show you. This is in Ecuador. So she is on top of the moon, she is over the earth, and there is a serpent that comes out a snake. This is a very, very good depiction of what is meant by the Queen of Heaven, what is meant by Lucifer, how Lucifer is in control of Babylon, how Lucifer is in control, blinding the hearts of those who do not know God. It is also a good depiction of how he is the God of this world. It's also a good depiction of how the entire world, as it states in 1 John chapter 5, how the entire world lies under wickedness. So I wanted to share that with you guys. So I recently, not too long ago, not on purpose, but got an opportunity to visit a Roman Catholic church, and this so happens to be of a Hispanic congregation. So I wanted to share, and hopefully I don't get in too much trouble, but to share how this Jesus does not look like my Jesus. This Jesus looks very much like the picture of Tammuz that I just showed you with Semiramis. You decide based on what you're looking at. This Mary, I'm sorry, but my Mary does not float around in the skies. Many Catholics, they refer to this as Immaculate Conception, the doctrine that God preserved the Virgin Mary from the taint of original sin from the moment she was conceived. It was defined as a dogma of the Roman Catholic Church. In other words, Mary deified, meaning she did not have sin, and she was void of original sin. And then what is Marian apparition? So Catholics and many Muslims actually believe this, that Mary shows up in kind of a ghost type figure, appearing in the skies. Who does this sound like? Sounds like Queen of Heaven that I just shared with you. So either she's really a ghost, or she's really an entity and a principality and an idol of the people, and she is the one blinding the hearts and the minds of people who worship her. In fact, when she appears in some of the churches who do believe this, she will appear and she will speak, and the people will hear her and she will send them messages. So I wanted to emphasize the fact that as a believer, we do not elevate or idolize angels, saints, or those. We don't deify anybody other than God Himself. And it's very important, if you are to be free of idolatry and to be accepted by the living God Himself. Here's another picture. It's funny how she doesn't just appear in what is referred to as religion. She's also appeared by those who say that they're not religious. Yeah, right. So even New Age doctrine will emphasize her, and she is the main one that even encourages witches and those who know the world of paganism. She will encourage this deception, and what it is people are blinded by the fact that she's a real principality that does exist. I call her Lucifer. Some call her Ishtar, some call her Lilith, some call her Ashtoreth, some call her Inanna. The scriptures themselves, they refer to it as Ashtoreth, and Babylonian will be referred to as Ishtar or Inanna, if you want to even go further back. But definitely I wanted to speak on the subject. I hope you gain some further understanding of why I am careful not to celebrate certain things, because in my understanding, Nimrod idolized the evergreen tree. The Christmas tree can also be seen as a figure of Nimrod. The wreath can be a figure of the female fertility organ, as well as the tree being the erectified phallus, is also an understanding of it. The star on the tree can be pictured as the queen, or the crown. Why do people put angels on top of trees? It's not an angel announcing the coming of the Messiah, Yeshua. It's has a different meaning depending on which cultural and spiritual perspective that you look at it. I'm not here to fight Christmas trees or anything else except for tradition and the way that people view certain things. Myself, I still believe in Jesus, I still believe in Yeshua, I still believe in Christianity, but I will not tolerate idolatry, and this is obviously things of idolatry, and so this is why I'm exposing it. Culturally, my wife and I, we deal with certain things on different levels because of more than one culture that we have to work with, but I am through with being blinded by this woman who some would call their mother, and I refuse to call this my mother. Thank you.